now can't see the fight. Smoke and mirrors, they lead the way. Fooling hearts night after day. Welcome to the show, it's all pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end. The world's a stage, they run the flow. You clap on cue down in the front row. Painted faces, masks of stone. A hollow laugh that chills the bone. Puppets dangle strings unseen. Life's a trick, a cruel machine. Do you see it? Do you feel it? Or just believe it? Welcome to the show, it's all pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end. The world's a stage, they run the flow. You clap on cue down in the front row. Round and round the carousel, a twisted tune you
Welcome. So, there's been a lot of posts, a lot of speculation, a lot of people are talking about this right now, because they have recently released a bunch of new stuff on Epstein. So, we thought, why not? Let's jump into it and do a show on Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein's dead, or so they say. Okay. But whatever protected him is still very much alive. And tonight isn't really about conspiracy per se. There is, you have to be conspiratorial about some of this stuff because this is so much bigger than people realize. Okay. People think that this is just about Epstein, and it's not. So tonight isn't about conspiracy, but there will be some in there. It's about records, flight logs, court documents, plea deals, and the uncomfortable fact that the most powerful people on Earth keep showing up in the same man's orbit. How many people can this guy be involved with? And when you really sit back and read even a fraction of it, it's mind-boggling. So this isn't just a story about one predator. It's a story about a system that decided some questions were too dangerous to answer. And so, welcome to Breaking the System. So this man shouldn't really have existed because Epstein didn't come from money. He didn't build a company, he didn't invent anything, and he didn't even finish college. Yet somehow in the late 1980s, Epstein had private jets, multiple mansions, a private island, and direct access to presidents, royalty, billionaires, and elite scientists. And that contradiction is where the story begins. Because typically, to be involved in those type of people, you have to come from money. You have to have a company that is well off and is doing extremely well. You have to invent and be extremely creative. Most of those people have went to college, and he was none of those things. It's very contradictory. And the more that you read into this, the more that this has got to be one of those just absolutely crazy, insane stories of all time. So Epstein started as a math teacher at the Dalton School in New York. No advanced degrees, no pedigree in finance. But Dalton happened to educate the children of Wall Street's most powerful families. Think about it. Soon after, Epstein leaves teaching and enters high finance. Not as a trader, not as an analyst, but as a man who managed other people's money. Well, that's kind of weird too. And to this day, no public record fully explains how Epstein generated his wealth. And that should matter. It should matter a lot. And power doesn't announce itself from criminal acts, it announces itself with access. And Epstein had access to what most people never will. And to what you and I could not even fathom even exists in the realm of possibilities. He socialized with presidents. He attended events with royalty. He funded elite universities. He embedded himself in scientific and philanthropic circles. And although this doesn't prove any criminal behavior, because like you or I, we could do any of those things, right? But it does prove tolerance, and it proves repeated tolerance. Private jets don't fill themselves, and private islands don't host guests by accident. So patterns really matter. So let's be very clear. Jeffrey Epstein's criminal behavior is not disputed. Multiple underage victims, multiple sworn statements, years of documented abuse. And in 2008, federal prosecutors in Florida had enough evidence to pursue serious charges. And then something extraordinary happened. And so some of this information, I might go over it a couple times because I'm trying to read from 2 different screens and 6 different pages full of stuff because there's just so much stuff here. And this only scratches the surface. So if you're really interested in this, this is one of those rabbit holes that you could literally go down for weeks and weeks and weeks and probably still come up with questions as to how in the hell this happened. Okay? So, something extraordinary happened. Jeffrey Epstein was given a non-prosecution agreement. Not just for himself, which is very interesting, but for unnamed potential co-conspirators. And you have to be cognizant of the words that these people are using, because especially in law, they're very, very particular in what words they use. If you listen to anybody that is a public speaker, words matter. So, unnamed potential co-conspirators. Okay? It's very important. And the deal ensured no federal charges, limited jail time, and a work release with certain privileges. Sounds like anybody else that has money, right? Any rapper, singer, artist, Hollywood elite, right? If we get caught or if they get caught doing the same thing that we're doing, we get sent to prison and they get sent off to a private island to drink martinis, and it's called rehabilitation. Like, let's be clear, they don't live in the same world of reality that the rest of us do, okay? So, victims were not properly informed, and the public was not told the full scope, and I still don't think that we are told the full scope. One, because it's planned, it's by design. It is just so massive. And two, I think it would break down the social fabric, especially of the United States. And so the case effectively stopped. And this wasn't leniency. This was insulation. It was protection. So now we move very carefully. Because association is not guilt, but repeated proximity really raises questions. It's one of those things. Are you guilty by association? Just because I associate with you doesn't mean that I myself am guilty of those things, or that I could have potentially known about those things. And that's a very gray area, right? And so there are a lot of people that he was associated with that possibly could have not known who or what he was actually about. Could be. Like, let's give credit where credit is due, okay? So you're not guilty just by association. But flight logs exist, and that's one area that there's so many people that keep asking or keep talking about the flight logs, okay? I want you to take a step back and look at the island, okay? Look at the island. There's no landing strip on the island. So in reality, the flight logs only matter very, very minuscule. Because we really have to ask ourselves, if there was no airstrip, if there's nowhere for planes to land, then how are they getting there, right? By boat. Supposedly there was a submarine that was involved, helicopter, a multitude of other things, okay? So the flight logs are important, but they're not as important as what people make them out to be. So the flight logs exist, the calendars exist, the photographs exist, and the settlements that he was involved in, or the corporations that he was involved in, those settlements exist as well, and those matter. Former President Bill Clinton appears multiple times on the flight logs, although Clinton denies knowledge of crimes, and him and Hillary are supposed to be talking in front of Congress. I think it's behind closed doors, closed session. Just should be for public, right? We should know, because I do think that a lot of our tax dollars funded a lot of this stuff, right? And I don't feel comfortable with that, and I bet you don't either. But that's the hard truth. Just because the people that he was involved in, I do believe that a lot of our tax dollars funded a lot of what happened. So we got Bill Clinton. We have Prince Andrew, maintained a documented friendship with Epstein, and a civil case was settled without admission of guilt. We'll talk about that a little bit more. The current president, Donald Trump, socialized with Epstein in the 1990s, later distanced himself publicly, because supposedly the story goes that one of his workers at Mar-a-Lago was invited to a hotel room or something along those lines, and word got back from this worker to Trump that things were offered or things that happened, and he wanted nothing to do with that, and so he distanced himself from him. Whether or not that's true, who knows, because a lot of this stuff is speculation, even though it's in a lot of those Epstein files that were released. Not all of that's true. Some of it's speculation, okay? So keep that in mind as well. We also have elite universities that accepted Epstein's money after his conviction. We'll talk more about that too. And so these are all facts. None of this is accusations. These are facts. But facts don't exist in isolation. There's more. And notice something important. Most consequences happen in civil court. You have, what happens in civil court? Settlements, confidential agreements, no admission, right? Civil court doesn't establish criminal guilt. It doesn't force testimony, which is extremely convenient. And it doesn't expose networks. It closes stories quietly. So if you can get in a civil court, and a lot of times there's money that's involved, and it's like, if you shut your mouth, I'm going to pay you some money, and we'll wash our hands of it and call it done. That's what happened a lot of times, okay? And so that quietly shuts the door on a lot of these stories, keeps them hidden for a very, very, very long time. So in comes the question of blackmail, which we know exists. Epstein maintained surveillance systems. Victims described the recordings that took place. Detailed contact lists were found. And blackmail doesn't require everyone to be guilty, only viable. You can't prove who was compromised, but we can prove that the environment itself existed. And I think that's almost more important, right? And the death kind of froze everything for a while. So in 2019, Epstein was arrested again and placed into federal custody. And conveniently, cameras malfunctioned. Guards failed protocol. They were sleeping when they were not supposed to be sleeping. They didn't check on the jail cell when they were supposed to. They were supposed to do it like at certain times, and that never took place. So Epstein supposedly died. Whether suicide or not, the outcome was the same, right? And the outcome was no testimony, no trial, no expansion or no explanation as to what happened, okay? And when we look at the supposed suicide, there's so many questions that come into play. So there was 2 guards. I think one was a man, one was a woman, but I'm not for sure, and that doesn't really matter. But there's new evidence that came out in the new documents that they just released last week, of pictures of the video surveillance of an orange thing, an orange character, okay? And when you dig into it, they think that it was or could have been another criminal, right? Somebody within the jail. Whether if it was a guard that was dressed up or whether if it was another inmate or whoever, right? There's something orange on the camera, and they can't quite make out exactly what it is, but like, we're not stupid. We can put 2 and 2 together, okay? So supposedly this thing, this entity, this person, knew where the camera was, and there's only one camera that shows access up through the stairwell. And they knew exactly where to climb up to where they wouldn't be in the camera view. Makes you ask questions, doesn't it? So, who benefited after Epstein? Okay. Institutions avoided exposure, power avoided precedent, and the public received an ending without answers. And Epstein didn't disappear, he was just contained. Okay? And if you're listening closely, you'll notice that the system didn't break. It closed ranks. Okay? So let's shift gears for just a second here. Let's take a step back. August 10th, 2019, 6:30 in the morning, Metropolitan Correction Center in Manhattan. The official conclusion is simple, that it was suicide. Okay? We have to question that. Because the noose, and that was the other thing, the two guards don't remember there being a noose, but they supposedly pulled him down off of something, and then the noose that they found wasn't supposedly the noose that was there, and like it's weird. The whole thing is extremely weird. I don't think he died. I don't think it's suicide. Okay? The whole story is too big. He's too big. I don't think he's dead. Okay? Just my 2 cents. You think what you want to think. I'm not here to make you think something other than just getting you to think on, like, I should be asking questions. Okay? But in the history of global intelligence, coincidences don't exist, only the outcomes. And the moment Jeffrey Epstein died, every unanswered question died with him. And to understand why that mattered, to understand why his death was ultimately closing of the books, we have to go backward. We have to look at the architecture of silence. And this is not a story about a predator, it's a story about sovereign elite, a class of people who don't just break the law, they exist in the space where the law is written. Okay? And that's where we was talking about a while ago. If I break the law and let's say that a Hollywood elite does the exact same thing, I'm going to go to prison and they're going to get sent to a resort where they can drink martinis and eat caviar, right? It's not the same, okay? So let's look at the Maxwell bloodline. And to understand Ghislaine Maxwell, I'm probably going to butcher names. I'm horrible with names, so just get that out there. So, to understand Miss Maxwell, you have to understand her father, not emotionally, but structurally. Okay? So, Robert Maxwell was not just a media tycoon, he was a node. And he was born in Czechoslovakia. He was a Holocaust survivor. He was a British Army officer. And later, this is the one that I find extremely interesting, a publishing magnate with global reach. Well, what do you mean when you say publishing magnate? When you look him up in Robert Maxwell's textbooks, and what does it include? You have the Pergamon Press, later which was the Macmillan Publishers, and that was acquired in 1988. You have McGraw-Hill, and there was a few others. I'm not finding them at this time, but there are others like Glencoe, Burnell Loft. But the important thing is that these are history books that are being taught to our children K through 12, and that this guy was involved in. And remember, not that he's guilty by association, but he's guilty by we should be asking questions. Okay? How is there so much power? And how is there so much that, like, how are we not awake to all of this? Okay? So he was a publishing magnate with a global reach. Multiple intelligence insiders, including the Arabian, have alleged that Maxwell operated as a conduit between intelligence services like MI6, Mossad, and allegedly the Soviet Union. This guy was everywhere. And in the 1980s, Maxwell allegedly helped Mossad distribute a backdoored version of the Promise software, PROMIS, okay, to governments worldwide. And this was like a Trojan horse. It allowed the agencies to see everything that was the family business, and they called this the acquisition of leverage. Well, what is Promise Software? Promise, which is Prosecutors Management Information System, is a historically significant computer-based case management system designed for public prosecutions against or prosecution agencies to track criminal cases, defendants, and court events. Very interesting that Epstein had these types of connections even before he was in power. Almost like it was set up since from the beginning for all of these things to happen. And that's where like the conspiracy theory stuff starts to play into a lot of this. But those are the questions that we should be asking, okay? Because it does involve us. It does. So when Robert Maxwell died in 1991, falling from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, 6 Israeli intelligence officials attended his funeral, and he was buried on the Mount of Olives with honors usually reserved for heads of state. Interesting. And so that's not symbolism, that's classification. So Miss Maxwell didn't just lose a father, she lost a handler, and within a year, who did she meet? Mr. Jeffrey. And so she brought the blueprint, and he brought what? Well, he brought the money. Let's talk about the Zorro Ranch. It's an interesting one. If you don't know, Jeffrey Epstein owned a ranch called the Zorro Ranch in Santa Fe County. 10,000 acres of isolated high-altitude silence. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. To the neighbors, it was just another billionaire's retreat. But when we look at the 2026 files, these confirmed what survivors like Maria and Ann Farmer whispered decades ago, that this wasn't just a residence, it was a laboratory. So in comes this eugenics blueprint. So Epstein didn't just want wealth, he wanted a genetic legacy. And this guy's whack. Like, it's the best term I know for. Like, he's either whack or he's like the smartest mofo on the planet. Okay? So these files detailed his seeding initiative, a plan to impregnate up to 20 women at a time at his Zorro Ranch to, quote-unquote, improve the human race with his DNA. So he modeled his version after the repository for germinal choice, and that's the 1980 sperm bank for Nobel Prize winners. If you didn't know, you can look that up. So Epstein believed that he was the next evolution. So among the architectural logs for the ranch were plans for a state-of-the-art cryogenic facility. Epstein intended to have his head and his reproductive organs frozen upon his death, hoping for a future where technology could resurrect his genius. Like, wow. Amazing. The underground infrastructure. We analyzed with drone footage, they analyzed with drone footage and architectural blueprints and found in the 2026 dump large-scale subterranean spaces that weren't for storage. They were outfitted with medical-grade air filtration and surveillance hubs that could monitor every room in the main mansion, just like what was taking place at the island. Pretty crazy, okay? And if you dig down that rabbit hole, they will say that there's a really interesting, I forget her name, but there's a really interesting interview on Tucker Carlson with a lady that talks about the underground infrastructure that the United States is doing. And so the story is that there's around 100 to 200 different underground infrastructures, and some of them are connected, some of them aren't, but some of them are connected through like this large-scale subterranean spaces for the elites, for supposed end-of-world type cataclysmic stuff. Okay? Put two and two together. Okay? Who is he involved in, and what's going on? Okay? If he's building this underground infrastructure, and the government is building underground infrastructure, and he knows a lot of them, and a lot of them know him, like, okay? Just saying. And Epstein didn't hunt randomly. He as we talked, he built infrastructure. Everything around him was considered an infrastructure. And at the center of this was Jean-Luc Brunel, founder of MC2 Mobile Management. Court findings allege that Epstein financially backed Brunel's agency with $1 million. It's not much, right? But still, he backed him. In exchange, young women, many underage, were allegedly trafficked through the quote-unquote modeling promise. Okay, I know that we've all seen videos, movies, documentaries of what's promised to these young and upcoming models, and it's extremely grotesque how these young women are taken advantage of and their innocence are lost, and they do sell their soul to the devil to become rich and famous. And a lot of people that are rich and famous have sold their soul to the devil. That's the only explanation that I can give for this. And they were sold this modeling promise through things like visas, apartments, debt. Okay. So he would give them something, but they would have to give him something in return. And the modeling industry was the perfect honey trap for his factory. It provided a constant stream of vulnerable, ambitious women who could be gifted to men in power to ensure their loyalty. Okay. Brunel was arrested in France in 2021. And in February of 2022, he was found dead in a cell. How did he die? It was ruled a suicide. Well, that mirror is almost perfect. Okay. In steps Victoria's Secret. This is the billionaire in the background, Les Wexner, founder of L Brands, which is Victoria's Secret. Wexner granted Epstein what they called power of attorney, a level of financial access that's almost unheard of, and it gave a man with no clear source of wealth the keys to a multi-billion-dollar kingdom. Victims later testified that Epstein used the Victoria's Secret name as a recruitment tool. Okay, remember, he has these modeling promises that he's giving out, and what better tool than Victoria's Secret that he could use? Hotel rooms, auditions, false promises. Wexner has denied knowledge, but the architecture still remains. A world-famous brand used as a front for this dark room operation. And if you haven't noticed by now, and there's a few more that we're going to talk about, they're like, oh, I had no idea. And remember, we're not saying that guilty by association, but either he had to be the smartest SOB on the planet, and he knew how to use and talk to people, or these rich elite people that are smart enough to gain and make millions upon billions of dollars and to have these companies and to be very successful, to be almost taken advantage of by this dark room possessed man of a person. Okay. So we jump to the 2026 dump that happened last week. This happened on January 13th. The Department of Justice released 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images. Okay. And like if you try to go on their website, it's extremely hard to navigate through this, but there is supposedly a couple different places where they have turned all of this information into like a Google email database, and it's extremely easy to search for things. So if you want to jump down this rabbit hole, I would encourage you to find that platform and jump on that so you can find stuff a lot easier, because the Department of Justice just makes it really hard to find multiple pieces of information and to start putting things together. Like, and there's a reason for that, right? It's how the system is built. Okay. So let's look at the tech giants. Elon Musk, he's in some of the emails. In 2012, a thread that was revealed, Epstein asking, how many people will you be for the helicopter to the island? And Musk replying, probably just Tallulah and me. What day or night will be the wildest party on your island? Question. We have Bill Gates, which is under heavy scrutiny and pressure right now. There's ledgers on him. New files include a draft email from Epstein alleging that he helped Gates get drugs to deal with the fallout of an affair with a Russian bridge player. And when you jump down that rabbit hole, that is extremely scary, because that takes us into COVID. And there are emails in there from like 2013, 2015, 2017, within that range, and it was probably all of those dates, where they talk about planning this stuff. Okay? And once again, take this with a grain of salt. Like, is all of this true? Is part of this true? Don't know. Okay? But you have to look at the big picture. Okay? And so, like, the reason that I'm doing this today is, like, there's so many people that are focused on little things like Epstein or the flight logs or the victims. We have to look at how fucking massive this thing is. And not just one player, but we have to look at all of the people that are involved. And what do they all have in common other than Epstein, right? And like, this is massive, okay? So Bill Gates is one of those as well. COVID is in there as well. They're all connected. The MIT funnel, we look at the institution manuals on how Epstein funneled a $2 million donation from Gates to MIT's medical lab, while specifically requesting that the source be obscured. Well, why? Why don't you want people knowing that you're donating to MIT? Is that not a reputable brand? Is that not something that we should be proud of, that we're donating to? We should question that as well. We look at political gifts. Now we have Clinton, President Clinton, in the hot tub with photos, right? New grainy images seized from Epstein's homes. They show the former president in social settings on the island that contradict his limited contact narrative. Okay? I really wonder what they're going to find out with him and his wife this week. Probably nothing. It's all behind closed doors. I think it should be all televised. I mean, Hillary wants it all televised. Let's just give her what she wants. I think we should just blow the lid off all of it. Burn them all. Burn it all down, right? This is so big, so massive, like you have no idea. Okay. Let's look at the money laundromat. Financial institutions flagged Epstein for years. We have people or places like J.P. Morgan that maintained accounts despite internal warnings. J.P. Morgan is a very reputable, or what I would call a reputable, investment institution. Why are they getting involved with Epstein if they know that this stuff is going on? Leon Black paid Epstein $158 million for tax advice. That's some pretty expensive tax advice. Like, maybe I would find somebody a little cheaper. Like, unless it's, like, how important is it that you need to spend $158 million for tax advice? Okay. This ledger shows Leon Black didn't just pay Epstein for tax advice. The money was moved through a series of family offices that functioned as a private intelligence budget, and settlements followed. No admissions of guilt, right? We talked about this earlier. It's all paid for by the courts, under the table. Okay, so no admission of guilt. Nothing went to full trial. It was what they called civil containment. Jeffrey Epstein's didn't end a story like we said. It froze it. No testimony. No cross-examination. No expansion of the story. And that's why his death wasn't just tragic. It was convenient. Extremely convenient. And the system didn't fail Jeffrey Epstein. The system protected itself from Jeffrey Epstein. Or it was designed to do that. Okay? And if he's still alive, which he could be, we should be looking into that. Look into Fortnite. He has an account, or supposedly he has an account that's still active, that's still being played on. Why aren't we given the IP address? Why aren't we tracking this supposed person down that's playing on Epstein's account? He had accounts in Roblox as well. What is Roblox in the news for recently? For preying on children. All of these things are connected. Whether you want to believe it or not, they are. Okay? So the Epstein network was never just about the people. It was an architect, a system that traded access for silence, for prestige, for protection, and intelligence for immunity. And if you really think that anyone is ever going to go down like any of the big players, and like I said, unless we just burn it all down, which I don't think will happen, you're going to get a couple people that are designed to take the fall, like Bill Gates. I think there's so much that's in there that was left unredacted that Bill Gates is probably one of the fall guys. Just like I think once they start digging into COVID, that forget his name, the big guy that was in charge of COVID, that he's going to go down as well. So I do think there's going to be some fall guys, but I don't think you're ever going to find out who or what is at the tip top, because I think it's big government. It's not just one government, it's government together. I think they play these games and they're like, oh, we're going to play war and you can attack us and we'll attack you, and we're going to exchange some money and we're going to kill off some of our citizens and we'll just play this out and we'll just have fun, right? It could be as well, right? That could be one of the stories, but like, I don't think any of the big players are gonna take the fall unless the whole system burns. Like, unless we get somebody that comes out and just quietly releases everything to all of the press, everywhere, all around the world, all at the same time, every publication, like, it's too big, there's too many people that's involved, it's going to quietly be put away. Just like it's quietly been put away for as long as it has been. And if you're asking so many questions now, you're just a tip of the iceberg. You're not asking the questions that's underneath the water that we have yet to hit. Okay? So this architecture, this system, this is designed to be like this. And if we think of it like this, sunlight is supposed to disinfect. But at this altitude, if we're looking directly at the sun, what does it do? It blinds us because it's so massive. There's so much that encompasses this that it blinds us. And so this is breaking the system. We finally have some of the files. I don't think we'll ever get all of them. I don't think we'll ever get everything that's unredacted. The question now is, if we are given the truth, the unequivocal truth, and we have some of it, what will we do with it? What will we do with the truth? Will you stop believing in the media because they're bought and paid for? Will you stop believing in Hollywood because they're bought and paid for? Will you stop believing in certain branches of the government and even certain people within the government because they're bought and paid for? All of these things are bought and paid for because it's part of the system. How are we going to break it? See you next time.